Your next move. Everybody has a next move. Even if you've been at your company for 11 years, as the baby boomers in this crowd have been, and I've been at Timing for 31 years, there's always a next move for us. And these three women are going to help us understand how to think about this most wisely. So I'm going to give you really quickly just a little background on each of them. Alex Wallace, whom I've known for quite a few years now, although I didn't know Alex when she was at CBS for 17 years. She moved to NBC in 2005 as executive producer of Weekend Today. She rose through the ranks at NBC News. She left there in July as senior vice president of NBC News, the number 2 person in news, overseeing nightly news, Meet the Press, the DC bureau, and she left as many heads were rolling under new leadership at NBC News. April Underwood, I just met in August when I was doing this Google story that I told you about prominent women currently and formerly at Google. April is one of the formers. She was a software engineer out of the University of Texas, her native state. She got her MBA at Berkeley. She worked briefly at Intel in Oregon. She went to Travelocity early in her career. She worked for a very young CEO who we know today, Michelle Peluso, who is now the CEO of Gilt Group, when Michelle was running at age 30 Travelocity. She worked at Google. She sort of learned, April was telling me about like being in on these meetings where Susan Wojcicki, and who we're going to hear from next, and Marissa Mayer were very collaborative and learned from a lot of women at Google, and then spent 5 years at Twitter until February of this year when she joined this hot little company called Slack as head of product. And as many of you know, how many people use Slack here? Okay.
Good.
You need
Everybody
more.
else,
We use Slack. We use Slack. Okay, and then Allison Shapiro, who I met a few years ago, actually through a mentoring program that we do at the U.S. with the U.S. State Department, where we bring young women, leaders from across the developing world, to the United States for a month as part of our grown-up, most powerful women's summit. Allison is a communications coach today, working with Vital Voices, the organization that works with us on that program. Allison is a former opera singer, then worked in the Israel and Italian consulates in Boston, then worked at the Kennedy School, then quit it all to become a folk singer, and then decided to go back to this speaking thing and set up her own company a few years ago called Global Public Speaking, moving to DC for that. So, with that in mind, each of you tell me, what is your chief criterion? We have to, that word is very awkward, but singular, criterion, right? For evaluating a change in your career.
Well, so I was unexpectedly found myself leaving NBC in July, and it has ended up being kind of a huge blessing in disguise. I had thought I'd been a big company girl, and all of a sudden the world is your oyster, and it's about what you want to do, not what you are told to do or you have to do. And so I actually sat down and thought, what is the thing I really, really want to do next? And I had one criteria, and that is that I want to work somewhere where there's a tailwind, not a headwind. I've worked in big media for 27 years, and I've faced a headwind. I am like a plane. I've been a plane flying into a headwind for 27 years. Mm-hmm.
Tailwind, not a headwind. It's very good advice.
For me, I think I look for the opportunity for growth. Both, is the company that I'm looking at joining solving a really big problem that I feel compelled to throw my energy into? Do they have, are they showing signs that they've got a good approach at how they're going to solve that problem? And then also, from a personal standpoint, am I going to be able to grow in my role there? Am I going to be able to expand my own horizons? Because what I've found with each step is that as you progress in your career and you stand a little bit taller, you can start to look around and you discover new opportunities. You find out, you discover other people that are taking on exciting leadership opportunities, and then you you sort of look within yourself and ask, like, maybe I could do that. And with each step, I've been sort of coming into each new role with the confidence and the hunger to be able to have more of an impact. And so I look for that growth both at the company level and then also with the specific opportunity, the specific role that I'm going into as well.
I mean, Twitter's been through so many, leadership changes and sort of a lot of sort of angst there. Were you worried about Twitter's future when you decided to go to Slack, or how did that come about?
Well, so I was with Twitter for 5 years, so that was from 170 people until 4,000. And so I think by any measure of success, Twitter was afforded all of us huge opportunities for growth. It grew as a service, it grew as a company, and I got the chance to lead business development, product, and product marketing teams there. So it was an amazing opportunity there. So I actually left Twitter when I felt like I had done what I'd done far more than I could have ever expected to do there, and I wanted to actually take a step back and take some time to decide what my next move would be. And I'd had my sort of my horizons broadened during my time there, and met some really great other leaders, particularly other women there, and really wanted to take the time to find the right next opportunity. So I left Twitter not knowing what I would do next, and thankfully I did that because that meant that I was available when I got introduced to somebody named Stuart and got to learn more about what Slack was up to, and really fell in love with the product and the team.
Stuart Butterfield, who founded Flickr and is now running Slack and has raised a lot of money for Slack, and Slack has a valuation of almost $3 billion now. And so, Allison, what has been your criterion for your crazy career path?
It all looks very linear in hindsight.
All things do.
All things do. The main criteria for me was to find a position, to find a role where I could bring my whole self. We all have multiple hats that we wear. We may be passionate about one thing and another thing, and sometimes the many parts that make up who we are aren't appropriate in this job or that job. And so I spent so much time in my transition looking for a job that would fit all my different passions, interests, and skills. And I realized that job simply didn't exist. And so I decided the only way to be able to be my true self and to bring to bear all that I am was to start my own business around my passions, interests, and skills.
And now Allison works with management at companies from Bank of America to Belvedere Vodka and a bunch of federal agencies, and the Kennedy School where she worked for Harvard's Kennedy School, where she worked for quite a few years on communication skills. And I guess opera singing and folk singing and speaking they're all means of communications, right?
It's all a way of communicating. We communicate through music, we communicate through speech. Essentially, it's about relating to other people and inspiring them, whether you're inspiring them through your music or you're inspiring them as a speaker and you want them to go out and take action and speak up about injustices and things that they're passionate about. I'm hoping to inspire others to stand up and to speak out.
So Alex, we got to sit next to each other last night at dinner, and we were talking about Alex setting up her own company after 2 decades in the corporate world, setting up Alex Inc. I'd like you to tell the audience what Alex Inc. is, and I'd love for you to talk about how you have learned the importance of picking your clients carefully.
I think it's really interesting. So I did not intend to set up Alex Inc. I intended to take a few months off. And first of all, I realized quite quickly, and I should have remembered this from my maternity leaves, that's not something I do very well. So I forced myself to take 6 weeks, and then I just started taking every call and meeting that came my way. And 70 meetings later, I realized I needed to start saying no, because I was making this list, and I'm like, oh my God, I could work on them for 15 minutes, and then I could do them for 20 minutes. So there's the opportunity. I'm doing media strategy and video strategy and content strategy, and we're now in a world, and storytelling. We're in a world where I've told stories for 27 years, and everyone wants their story to be told. And so it's actually an incredibly gigantic opportunity. I think I was overwhelmed. And I realize now it's like I can't say yes to everything. And so what I've started thinking about is what helps me. Where am I going to grow? And a boss said to me, Pat Philly, who you know, said to me years ago, cover your strong eye. It's the only way you develop your weak eye. And I'm really thinking, because there's some things that are coming my way that I could do in my sleep and would be incredibly easy, but I won't grow as much. So what I'm trying to do is say no to those and say yes to the ones that I find the most challenging.
So you said to me last night, though, in actually acquiring clients, tell them about your first 7 clients.
Well, I said yes. This is my first 7 meetings that I said yes to everyone.
Yeah.
That was a mistake. And then I realized that you have to break up with people quickly. So I'm working on breaking up.
Alex said to me last night, she's like, it's like the first 7 guys you date agreeing to marry all 7 of them. Who has a question? Yes, wait for the mic, please.
We keep hearing that women don't make the next move until they feel 100% or 150% ready. So I'm curious, did you ladies always feel ready, or how did you squash those voices in your head telling you that you weren't, and how did you get ready for that next move and stepping into a bigger role sometimes?
I mean, on my side, I've always tried to be thoughtful about it. One specific time I remember, I was at Google from 2007 to 2009, and I had joined in like a product program sort of management role working with partnerships. And while I was there, I had been lucky to get to be exposed to a lot of different parts of the company. And it turns out every year that goes on past that, I feel like I feel the value of those 2 years I spent at Google increases for me because of that network and because of just everything I learned there. It was kind of like finishing school after business school or something. In terms of how to get stuff done and build products. But what I printed out the list of Google products, and I made myself think about whether I felt passionate enough about any one of them to really make a push to work on one of those products. And I thought that Google was done. I thought that Google had come up with all the products it was going to come up with, and I was wrong.
Wow.
But I would say that in that moment, that 2009 was a year in which Google really didn't grow in terms of headcount, and so it didn't meet that original criteria around. I didn't feel that growth opportunity, and it turns out now Google has really expanded in a lot of exciting new areas, and I'm excited to see what they do there. But for me, that's just one example of how I really tried to be methodical and force myself to think about what is the way that I could get the most value out of where I already am before deciding to make the move. But moving definitely before it gets very uncomfortable, and hopefully before you feel like you've gotten lazy by any stretch of the imagination.
For me, I had no intention of starting my own business. It became a process of elimination. I had actually been offered a wonderful job in Washington, D.C., working on corporate social responsibility. It was going to be this great new opportunity. I gave up my apartment. I gave up my job at Harvard and said, I'm moving to D.C. I'm going to start this new life. And 2 days into the new position, I had a very bad gut feeling that this was not a healthy environment for me. Everything was perfect on paper, but for me, this was not a healthy place, and I wound up turning down that job with no backup, and I had given up my apartment and given up my job back in Boston, and wound up taking time off before realizing the only way to find the perfect job was to create it.
Good. Alex, last word.
I wish I had done this earlier. One quick thing, someone said when I left, it must be so hard, you must have been so defined by your kind of big job. And I realized that I've been defined by my work, and I'm taking my work with me.
Yeah. It's never too late to quit. And cover your strong eye. That's what we all need to do. Wonderful advice. Thank you so much.